It's been an interesting few weeks on the channel, and I've talked about a legacy gaming phone, a handheld that looks like a phone, and now for the first time in 2023, a mobile device that is positioned as a flagship gaming phone. Equipped with the latest and greatest from Qualcomm, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 mobile chipset, Nubia's RedMagic 8 Pro promises to be an absolute cutting-edge device with the power to handle everything that Android can offer. We will take a slightly different approach and look at the RedMagic 8 Pro strictly from the gamer perspective, going as far as potentially making it your dedicated handheld device. So does the 8 Pro have the magic to delight gamers, or does it ultimately miss the mark? Join me, the Retro Tech Dad, as we explore the flagship phone meant for gamers. Oh yeah, it's spec time. The RedMagic 8 Pro comes equipped with a stunning 6.8-inch AMOLED display at 1116 by 2480 resolution, with an aspect ratio of 20:9, refresh rate of 120Hz, and claims of up to 1300 nits of max brightness. You may have noticed something quite defining about this display, and that is the lack of a visual punch-out camera, allowing this to be a truly full-screen experience. It is powered by the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 with clock speeds up to 3.2 GHz and Adreno 740 graphics. The 8 Pro is available in two configurations, with the matte version, which is seen here, and includes 12GB of LPDDR5X RAM and 256GB of UFS 4.0 storage, and the void version, which includes 16GB of LPDDR5X RAM and 512GB of UFS 4.0 storage. Neither version has any ability to expand on storage. The phone has support for dual nano SIMs, Wi-Fi 7 tri-band, Bluetooth 5.3, NFC, and uses USB Type-C 3.1 for video out, charging, and data, with a 6000 mAh dual cell battery that supports 65 watts quick charging. It ships with Android 13 out of the box, and it is available now from RedMagic for $649 for the matte version or $799 for the void version. It's time for our unboxing segment, and my trusty unboxing opener has made its return for this video. Let's get these flaps out of the way. I'm not quite sure what happened here. And let's get this out of the way. Ooh, I definitely like that shiny font. Looking pretty sharp, and a quick look-see around the box. Win more games. Yep, that is what I am hoping to do with that 8 Pro. Okay, on the back of the package, we have a little bit of an idea of what this 8 Pro features. As we have already familiarized ourselves with most of the specs, I won't spend too much time staring at this. My particular device was built in January of 2023, and as you can see, I have the matte version with that 12GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. It looks like I am now part of the Snapdragon Elite Gamers. My trusty tool will help me take care of this pesky shrink wrap, and let's tear this off. Time to get the cover off of this box, and now we have the inner part of this package revealed with a very gamer aesthetic. But I have to say, I found it to be pretty slick. Let's take a look around, and the hand-drawn anime vibes are pretty cool, and I'm not finding it to be cheesy. I think it looks pretty awesome. It seems the packaging is suggesting that we must protect RedMagic headquarters from evil. Okay, let's take a look at what's inside of this. First thing we see is the key to get access to that SIM tray, and of course the usual documentation, a warranty card, and this looks to be a very simple protective case, which I won't bother with right now. Alright, let's look inside the quick start guide and see what kind of information we have here. As you can see, here is the device at a glance. It's worth noting that the 8 Pro does have a fingerprint sensor concealed beneath that display as well. Some more common instructions, a safety warning, and that's about it. We are almost at the point of checking the phone out, but unfortunately we will dive a little further into this box, and so let's put aside the phone for now. The rest of the package reveals the USB Type-C to Type-C cable and that 65-watt quick charger. I have to say that the charger is quite hefty. Okay, back to the phone. Here we have a card which has a bunch of QR codes. Feel free to pause if you're interested in capturing any of them. Alright, time to peel off this protective sleeve and get to the good stuff. As always, easy does it. And with that, we have the RedMagic 8 Pro, and now it's time to take a tour around the device. I really like this matte version. I was a little unsure if I would be disappointed that I didn't go with the void version. At the top of the phone, we have the unusual inclusion of the 3.5mm headset jack, a microphone, and one of the stereo speakers. On the left side of the phone, we have the exhaust vent, volume up and down rocker. On the bottom, we have the SIM tray, and again, there is no micro SD expansion, a microphone, the USB Type-C port, and the other speaker. Finally, on the right side, we have the dedicated game mode switch, microphone, the 520Hz shoulder buttons, the intake vent, and the power button. You can see that there is a factory applied screen protector on the display. Okay, let's power on the 8 Pro. So this process is fairly unexciting and pretty standard for Android, so I will speed through this portion. Welcome to your Android 13 experience. So it does appear that this build of Android is pretty vanilla and doesn't have a whole lot of bloatware on it. There's a few Nubia apps and items related to the RedMagic experience, but let's mess around a little and take a look at what's available in the quick launcher. Okay, let's check out the gaming mode function and flip the switch on this phone. Here is the main screen and launcher portion. Let's turn the sound off for a moment and check out the silly little thing I wanted to share. Time to get that fan started up, and yeah, like I said, it's pretty goofy, but kind of fun, I guess. You can see that I've added quite a bit to the launcher screen. Hitting on the plus sign, and here we can choose which apps and games we want to include on that main launcher screen. Let's return to the main screen, and if you hit the icon on the lower right corner, you can change the display style. On the top right corner, we have an icon that looks like a D-pad, and this is where you would go if you had some external RedMagic device to configure. Right beside that is the Game Space Center, and here we have access to game achievements, which gives you a summary of your activity for the day and week, and total playtime. Moving along, we have network settings, screen settings, anti-disturbance settings, system anti-mistouch, mirror host mode, the state after the competitive key is turned off, which is for when you turn that game mode switch off, the competitive atmosphere LED, game space wallpaper, RedMagic watermark, other options, and of course about game space. On the bottom we have the Super Base tab, and this has some additional things to look at. The RedMagic Time is where you can view your screenshots and video recordings on a per game basis, the plugin library, and some of these are game specific. Mora, the AI assistant, and finally Gravity X. Let's go in-game very quickly so I can show you around the overlay that is available to us, and probably what most of us will be interested in when using this device for gaming purposes. So swiping in from either the left or right 2 times will bring up this overlay screen, and from here this is basically our command center for easy access to useful tools. You can see that on the left side below the CPU speed we have a drop down to choose between 3 different presets: Eco, Balance, and Rise. You can see on the right we have quick settings to things like screen capturing, recording, turning the fan on and off, rotation lock, adjusting the screen refresh rate, and other options. Additionally, on the top right corner we have the ability to launch different apps to open alongside the current app on screen. So for example, I will bring up YouTube and you can see how the multitasking works here, and it's obviously pretty useful. Now moving to the upper left side, and we have some additional things to look at. So pressing on the cube looking icon will bring up the Genshin Impact Energy Cube. And what's neat about this is that once this is configured, you don't actually need to toggle the game mode in order to bring up your performance settings, and it will now automatically launch with those configured settings right from the Android home. So moving on, we have a bunch more options here to tweak, ranging from performance settings for the CPU, GPU settings, settings for recording, and then plugin settings that you can choose to enable. So that's a quick overview of this overlay. So let's talk about the build quality of the RedMagic 8 Pro. The entirety of the phone feels very solid in the hands. It's obviously built quite well, and it's not going to flex or bend that easily without some decent force. The finishing is nicer than I expected, and this is my first RedMagic product, so I am definitely pleasantly surprised. I'm finding that I like the texture of the matte version, and unlike the matte finish on the Razer Edge, this 8 Pro does a decent job at minimizing fingerprints. We have a Gorilla Glass screen here, Very nice and smooth finish around the edges with what appears to be an aluminum finish around the edge. Overall, quite a nice device. The display is definitely one of the highlights here, and it's quite an attractive looking AMOLED panel with no sign of a camera. The colors, contrast, and sharpness are excellent. It gets very bright and overall quite vivid. Lastly, I wanted to attempt to show on screen the only time I ever noticed the under display front camera, and that is when the screen is displaying something white. And you can faintly see this tiny circle, and I will place an arrow on screen for you to see it. We can now move on to one of my favorite segments, and one that I always like to include in all of my in-depth videos, and this is where we will take a look at the size, weight, and some measurements of the RedMagic 8 Pro against some other devices. This will look a little different than usual, as I am also trying to compare against other phones, but also against some dedicated gaming handhelds. So you can see that in this shot we have from left to right and smallest to largest is an assortment of mobile devices. Starting with the retro handheld's Discord favorite, the Xperia XZ2 Compact, my daily driver, the iPhone 14 Pro, the RedMagic 8 Pro, and lastly the Razer Edge, which I did a full in-depth look at not too long ago. Here is the RedMagic 8 Pro resting on the Razer Edge tablet. Both devices actually have a 6.8-inch AMOLED display, but you can see that because of the bezels on the edge, it has a larger footprint. And here is the phone resting on the original Nintendo Switch just as a tablet. As I mentioned, I am looking at the RM8 Pro from a gaming handheld perspective. So here I have the RedMagic in a Kishi V2 Pro that I stole from the Razer Edge, and here it is compared against a Nintendo Switch. You can see that they share fairly similar widths, but the RM8 Pro with the Kishi is naturally going to be a bit shorter because of its 20:9 display. Moving on to the weigh-in, and the RM8 Pro comes in at just over 8 ounces or 228 grams. For comparison, the Razer Edge tablet is 249 grams or 8.75 ounces, making it slightly heavier than the RedMagic. Both devices do have active cooling. Here is the tablet-only portion of the Nintendo Switch at about 10.5 ounces or 298 grams, and with the Joy-Cons attached, adding another 100 grams or so at just under 400 grams or about 14 ounces. Here is the Razer Edge with the Kishi coming in at about 13.5 ounces or 383 grams, and finally the RedMagic 8 Pro with that same Kishi at 363 grams or 12.8 ounces, making it the lightest combination of the three. Finally, I know many will be interested to see how the RedMagic 8 Pro sits in various controller attachments. First up is my personal favorite, the Razer Kishi V2 Pro, and oddly enough I find it to be an even better fit for this device over the Razer Edge. The Backbone controller, the GameSir X2 Pro, the MGX, the GameSir X3, and finally the Razer Kishi version 1. Looking at the Kishi V2 Pro again and just how the phone sits in the attachment. It's a pretty solid fit with minimal flexing, and the phone is held on quite well with it. By the way, the regular Kishi V2 fits exactly the same way and is available for purchase separately, unlike the V2 Pro. Now looking at the GameSir X2 Pro, which I also find to be a very nice match for the device. Personally, I find the Kishi to be a little more comfortable, but the X2 Pro is an excellent choice that is cheaper and available separately. This one has essentially no flexing with the phone attached. It has a very nice look with it on there and does feel very much at home with it. Now the GameSir X3, and this isn't a bad fit per se, but I do find it to be unnecessarily bulky, and because the RM8 Pro already has active cooling, it seems a bit redundant. It does have a decent amount of flex compared to the X2 Pro, and of the two GameSir controllers, I definitely choose the X2 Pro. Here is the MGX, which is a Bluetooth controller attachment, and it is just a terrible match in terms of the visual aesthetic and looks kinda silly paired with the RM8 Pro. Personally, I use this controller with my Surface Duo, and for that it's really awesome. However, over on the RedMagic, it's probably the one I'd recommend the least for various reasons. You can see that the phone does not sit all that well, and I'd be worried that it will end up popping out of the attachment. Personally, I can't stand the overly stiff analog triggers. And finally, the Razer Kishi V1, and this one is not a great fit either, and it's just very wobbly and doesn't sit all that well in the attachment. So now that we've explored everything that we can see on the RedMagic 8 Pro, it's time to do a little teardown and take a peek inside the phone. So I started with 7 degrees Celsius to get that back plate heated up a bit, and that was enough to loosen the adhesive, and I was able to get my iFixit tool wedged in there fairly easily. Alright, now it's time to cut the adhesive and separate the back plate from the phone. Don't be too aggressive and stay near the edge when cutting the adhesive, or you will end up doing what I did and tear a little of that heat shield. Learn from my mistakes so you don't have any. Okay, here's a look at that back plate and a clear shot of the back of the phone without the back cover on. I decided to turn on the device so I could show the fan functioning without the back plate on. Just as an FYI, the fan is a lot quieter than it seems, especially with that back cover on. It does hit up to 20,000 RPM, so it is quite fast moving. Another thing I wanted to show while the device is powered on again is the LED lights on the back functioning. Here's a little sneak peek at the ribbon cables beneath the heat shield, and we will be able to remove that shortly. Alright, we've got a couple of standard screws here to remove on the back of the device by the camera array. Let's quickly get these off. One of the screws are slightly obscured by one of these LED pads. I guess the pads diffuse the light coming in from the LEDs. So here's a closer look at one of them. Okay, continuing on, and if you happen to ever take this device apart, be aware that the two screws closest to the camera are actually of a different length, so make note of that and keep them separate from the others. With all these screws off, we can remove that shield, and we've got some of that bubblegum thermal paste like we had on the Razr Edge. Here's a closer look at the back again without that heat shield cover on. Okay, now we can resume, and I will carefully unclip the ribbon cables that are covering the battery so we can peek at that quickly. Here's that 6000 mAh battery, and as I mentioned earlier, this is a dual cell battery, so each cell is 3000 milliamps. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the amount of steps to access this battery isn't too terrible, and in the future, in case the battery does need to be replaced, it does look to be easier to replace than some other devices. Alright, let's continue on. There is a plate over the camera array, and there is a hidden screw in the corner covered by a red sticker, most likely for warranty purposes, but we will be rebels and go ahead and remove this final screw. So with that off, we could take this plate off and further reveal the motherboard. One more close-up shot of the phone without all the coverings. And I wanted to show a size comparison of the fan inside the RedMagic 8 Pro, just as I had done for the Razr Edge. You can see it's pretty similar in size, and once again I am using a US dime for reference, and finally with my digital caliper out, you can see that the fan is about 17mm in diameter. Okay, with all of that out of the way, let's start talking performance and benchmarks. I just want to quickly mention that for every test, I have the RedMagic 8 Pro set to Rise mode. First up, here is the chipset as listed in CPU-Z. As you can see, we have that clock speed up to 3.2 GHz and the Adreno 740 GPU with 12 GB of RAM and Android 13. Moving on to our first benchmark with Geekbench 6, I decided to test my daily driver, the iPhone 14 Pro, with its A16 Bionic chip against the RedMagic 8 Pro's Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, and of course the device that I just recently covered, and what would technically be considered the most powerful dedicated Android handheld, the Razr Edge. Now Geekbench is testing the CPU performance here, and I do know that this is an area where the A16 Bionic is stronger, which can be seen by its numbers here. Now for a strict Android to Android comparison, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is destroying the Razr Edge's G3X Gen 1 in multi-core scores, which if you see my in-depth video on it, is pretty much in line with a AAA+ in terms of performance, but the RedMagic 8 Pro here is demonstrating nearly a 55% increase on the multi-core score of the Razr Edge. Here we have the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme test, and this is where we see the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 shine with its GPU performance. Compared to the Razr Edge, the RedMagic 8 Pro has more than doubled its score. Again, absolutely destroying whatever chipset Razr will have you believe is in their Razr Edge. This is an area where the RedMagic 8 Pro will slightly edge out that A16 Bionic. And next we have the Antutu benchmark suite, and again to no surprise, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is quite the performer against the Razr Edge, giving us nearly a 60% improvement in overall scores. Finally, I wanted to do one last thing and show performance in Rise mode with the fan both turned on and off. As you can see, scores are actually quite similar between the two stress tests, with both hovering around 98% stability, which on its own is quite impressive. However, the more important aspect of this is to show how much that fan helps to keep the thermals down, and definitely looking at the temperature curves, you can see that the phone is starting to stabilize at around 44 degrees Celsius with the fan turned on, whereas in the tests with it turned off, we were getting around 49 degrees Celsius, resulting in almost a 5-degree difference between keeping the fan turned on versus off. Now for one more showcase, I wanted to include some footage of the tech demo principles running on the device, and the RedMagic 8 Pro just kills it with performance. I was able to turn everything up, and the tech demo managed to keep that 30 frames per second locked in, something that I was not able to do over on the Razr Edge. So it's now time that we talk about battery life and go over some of the battery testing that I've done with the RedMagic 8 Pro. First up, and carrying over from my Razer Edge video, is my Aether SX2 test with Shadow of the Colossus running at 3.5 times native resolution. On the right side, I have it set to 100% brightness and volume, performance set to rise, Wi-Fi on, 120Hz, and the RedMagic 8 Pro was just shy of almost 4 hours, which is really pretty amazing. On the left side, we have Shadow of the Colossus again, but this time around, I turned down the resolution scaling to 2 times native resolution, 50% brightness and volume, performance set to eco mode, Wi-Fi off, 60Hz, and we were able to get over 6.5 hours of battery life. Again, really solid performance while still being able to enjoy some high resolution PS2 gaming. Next, we have my usual lighter test with Yoshi's Island and SNES 9X, and at 50% brightness and volume, performance set to eco mode, Wi-Fi off, 60Hz, and we are able to get 16 hours and 45 minutes of constant runtime. Again, very solid performance with that 6000 mAh battery and the improved efficiency of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Finally, I tested charging with the included charging block and cable, and the phone went from 0% to 100% in 43 minutes. And for my last test, I took surface temperatures of the phone after running the wildlife stress test, and I did not observe any temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius. The device definitely felt warm to the touch, but nothing that would make it too difficult to hold. Alright, finally let's get into some gaming and run a few native Android games, and I'll start out with Genshin Impact first because I wanted to show why I like using the Kishi with this device, since Razer finally updated their Nexus app for both the Kishi V2 and V2 Pro to support virtual controller mapping, which makes it great for devices that don't have the gamepad mapping ability. As you can see, I've used the Nexus tool to set my Kishi up to use gamepad controls, and this works great, and of course the RedMagic 8 is a great device to play Genshin on since it can handle this game at its best quite well. Here's some Asphalt 9, which is the first time I've featured this game on the Android side, and again, it's just fast and buttery smooth. And some Tower of Fantasy, which I have set to the epic settings, and this game does have full controller support, so it's a good one to demonstrate both using the RedMagic 8 Pro as a dedicated handheld, and also allows me to push the phone with the highest graphic settings. Finally, here's another one that I'm featuring on the channel for the first time, and this is actually a really great game despite it being a SpongeBob game. Battle for Bikini Bottom received a fantastic port to Android, and on the RM8 Pro I can set everything to epic without any issues, and it looks amazing.
You see, you're going to need to learn some new... Oh, yeah. Right.
Alright, now let's talk emulation. I will start pretty light for this chipset and check out PSP emulation in PPSSPP Gold. Here I have one of my favorite racing games ever, Outrun 2006, running at 10 times native resolution, and I think this is basically endgame for PSP emulation. I'll have to mess around with HD texture packs on this and see how far it can be pushed, but yeah, Outrun 2006 is running really smooth. Next we have some PlayStation 2 emulation, and up first, and a change from my usual Burnout 3, comes its sequel Burnout Revenge, and this one is running so well here with Ether SX2, allowing me to bump resolution up to 4 times native, and to be honest, this was almost able to run it 5 times without issues. For this game, I used no performance hacks. And as we saw a little glimpse of this game in the battery testing portion, Shadow of the Colossus is running here at 3.5 times native resolution, and again, it was almost perfect at 4 times native, but I decided to keep it at 3.5 times native to ensure that stability. Again, no performance hacks, and it's running incredibly well on the RedMagic 8 Pro. And a newcomer to the channel, here is Vita 3000 for Android running on the RM8 Pro. Now this is still very early in development, so there's obviously a lot of compatibility issues, and there's no doubt that something like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 will have some longevity when it comes to this emulator. Regardless, I wanted to show a game or two running here, and first up I have Guacamelee, which is an awesome Metroidvania style game, and this one works very well with Vita 3000. And then some TXK from Llamasoft and created by Jeff Minter, who is responsible for Tempest. Again, I know these are lighter games, but compatibility is high on the games I've shown, and it works perfectly on this phone. By the way, TXK is freaking amazing, and it is an exclusive to Vita, so a great example why emulation is so important, and yet again, we now have access to this brilliant game on our Android devices. Okay, moving on to some Nintendo consoles, let's start with Dolphin and check out Gamecube emulation first. Recently I've been featuring F-Zero, but I decided to change it up and feature a game I absolutely adore for Gamecube, which is Super Mario Sunshine. For Gamecube, I found I got better performance with the Dolphin MMJR build, and here I have Super Mario Sunshine running at a whopping 5 times native resolution. It looks freaking gorgeous here, seriously. And for my Wii emulation test, I decided to have some fun and show gameplay of the fan mod for Mario Kart Wii known as Mario Kart Fusion, which features a whole bunch of new tracks and features. This one did not work in MMJR, so I returned to the standard Dolphin build from the Play Store, and as you can see here, I have the game running very well at 4x native resolution on the RM8 Pro. Okay, let's move on to some 3DS emulation with Citra. First up, let's check out a game that I am a huge fan of and first played it on the Wii U. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker received a really solid port to the 3DS, and I've got it running here at 3x native resolution. It looks incredible with the higher resolution. It did run okay at 4x, but I tried different versions of Citra, and despite the game showing 30 frames per second, it felt a little off. So 3x seems to be the sweet spot for this game. Now next up is another port to the 3DS, this time from the Wii, and to me this is the superior version, and thanks to Citra looks incredible. Donkey Kong Country Returns is running here at 4x native resolution using Citra MMJ in this footage. Alright, continuing on with Nintendo consoles, we have Switch emulation using Skyline Edge version 40. And when I started my testing on the RedMagic 8 Pro, it was just on version 33, I believe. And so you can tell that development moves very quickly with Edge. Similar to Vita 3000, this one is in active development and literally sees compatibility improvements on almost a daily basis. So here is Diablo 3, which actually got fixed in version 40, and I was so excited that I went back and recorded this extra footage to capture Diablo 3 with Skyline running on the RedMagic 8 Pro, and it is working great. As I said, Skyline changes almost daily, and so I try to stay on top of any big changes to performance. Another game that was recently fixed in recent versions of Skyline Edge was Chicory, which wouldn't render the world properly, but now as you can see, it is running correctly. And finally, here is an awesome indie game, Katana Zero, running very smoothly here on the RedMagic 8 Pro. I think that as Skyline matures, we will see this phone being able to handle more and more of the Switch library without much trouble. Here's a quick test of some Xbox Game Pass cloud streaming, and the Wi-Fi 7 built into the phone will be great for local and cloud streaming. Here I've got the recently released GoldenEye Remastered, part of Game Pass, and paired with a controller attachment, the RedMagic 8 Pro is obviously not having much issue acting as a streaming device. And I wanted to also show off some gaming with the phone by itself, and also make use of the capacitive triggers that are part of the RedMagic 8 Pro. So quickly pulling up the overlay and then heading over to the trigger mapping, it's pretty simple to do, and you enable these shoulder triggers and then move the left and right icons over the areas that you want mapped. You can also drop down and change the input to be single or various other types of input. And now let's check this out in Asphalt 9, which I think is a great way to make use of these capacitive triggers. Finally, I wanted to demonstrate the HDMI out over USB Type-C. You can see that right now I have the phone set to mirroring, but there are other little tricks here. So you have the option to use your phone as a controller and have the video on your external monitor in case you don't have access to a Bluetooth controller. It's a little wonky in terms of switching around the modes and options, but it is interesting that it is all there. Another thing you can do is use your phone as a touchpad to navigate the interface on the external display. When you have game mode activated by using the dedicated switch on the phone, you are taken into this different interface, and from there you can launch all of your games and emulators. The display on the phone will also dim itself and show that it is casting, which is a nice option, and this way the phone isn't strictly mirroring. Another thing that is fantastic is when it is in this mode, the phone will scale properly to your external monitor or TV, and this is something I had complained about with the Razer Edge, since there wasn't any kind of game mode for the TV and all I had was straight screen mirroring without any resolution scaling, so you were stuck with that 20:9 aspect ratio on something standard like a 16:9 television, which results in having black bars on the top and bottom. So all in all, the video out feature is pretty good on this phone and quite useful for big screen gaming. So as we wind up this lengthy video, there are some concerns or cons that are worth talking about here. First off, if you aren't familiar with the RedMagic brand, it is a gaming sub-brand of Nubia, which was, or sort of still is, an associate company of ZTE. Now you might have heard, but ZTE was banned by the FTC last year for new device approvals because of what they believe to be a risk to US national security. So depending on how you feel about that, and given Nubia's somewhat close relationship to ZTE, you can make of that what you will. And talking about security, unlike some of the larger manufacturers like Samsung, which will provide a guaranteed 4 years of support for the OS through updates, the RedMagic will not have the same longevity, and I believe RedMagic will only offer 2 years of OS updates, but I could not find a firm commitment on this published anywhere by RedMagic themselves. In the time I was working on publishing this video, RedMagic did roll out an update addressing a few things, so hey, at least for now, they are active with the device. Now for the hardware, there are some drawbacks to a phone that is primarily designed for gamers in mind, and at the same time targeting a specific price point. The RedMagic 8 Pro does not offer any type of wireless charging, there is no way to expand on the internal storage through the use of micro SD cards, the phone is obviously not waterproof because of its active cooling design, and the cameras, especially the front-facing ones, are not going to compete with some of the other flagship phones. You can probably see on screen that I very poorly attempted to capture a selfie of Nala, and she is definitely not one to shy away from the camera. Again, for gamers, this isn't probably a deal breaker, and you can see that the front-facing camera from the Razer Edge isn't all that great either, but at least the RedMagic 8 Pro has a full array on the rear for photo taking, unlike the Razer Edge. So with some of those concerns in mind, is the RedMagic 8 Pro a phone that can be daily driven? The reality is that the choice can only really be made by you, the viewer, as everyone's needs are different. Ultimately, you have to decide if you are able to accept some of the minor limitations of this phone, but at the same time understand that you are truly getting cutting-edge performance at a surprisingly affordable price point. And in terms of that performance, you should be good for gaming and emulation for quite some time. Now, I alluded to the RedMagic 8 Pro when I ended my in-depth video of the Razer Edge, because at the end of the day, taking something like the RedMagic 8 Pro and adding a Kishi V2 gives you the same concept, but with a full screen display that has thin bezels, the latest Snapdragon chipset, and the ability to use it as a phone complete with most of the standard phone features, which when compared to the Razer Edge 5G makes the RedMagic 8 Pro an incredible value at $649. Regardless, there is one very important takeaway from the RedMagic 8 Pro, and that comes down to its Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip, which will be showing up in many devices this year, including the recently released OnePlus 11 and Samsung Galaxy S23, and its performance is top-notch and truly showing a worthwhile leap over its predecessors. I hope you enjoyed this in-depth look at the RedMagic 8 Pro from the gaming perspective, and as always, this is the Retro Tech Dad, and I thank you so much for watching.